Drive Saga 2. I've now watched it, and it's not as good as the first one. The reason I feel Drive Saga 1 Chaser worked was it was, in essence, character expansion on Chase, since, while he was a big part of the show, a lot of his character stuff didn't exactly shine through, so it was nice to give him a, okay, I should rephrase that. It wasn't that his character didn't shine through, it's just that he was always more part of an ensemble or used as a plot facilitating point than allowed to fully be his own character. So to take things a bit more from his perspective was interesting, especially since a lot of people felt he was Drive's breakout character. This doesn't feel like a necessary addendum and more a sequel to the Mach Saga novel. Now, as that's not getting translated, and it would take a lot of work to translate it because it's a novel, we only have basic recaps of that novel. But essentially, 2 years after the end of the series, in around December 2017, which hasn't actually occurred yet because I'm recording this in November, Roidmude 005, I'm of course talking about the novel to set up the actual film, somehow reveals itself as having survived its own destruction in the internet and plots revenge on, well, everybody else, and proceeds to evolve into an advanced Roidmude, the Revenger Roidmude. And it is eventually defeated by Go using a Mach driver that Rena made and other new equipment she made that runs for a limited time, and from how it's presented and described, I'm curious on whether it's tech that doesn't use core drive years, or she figured out how core drive years work in the first place. And if it's the latter, then it kind of invalidates the whole Krim sealing himself away until his technology isn't dangerous to the world thing from the end of Drive, which Mach Saga and this movie are also keep consistent. So, Movie War Genesis with the whole Ghost team up, that is officially out of canon. This doesn't exactly remove it from canon. Mach Saga doesn't exactly remove it from canon, but by Krim being sealed back up, and the novel explaining away that all of the drive tech they proceed to use is rebuilt stuff from Rena's own researches and experience with the technology from being under Krim for so long, it's pretty heavily implied, if not confirmed, that that movie did not happen. Now, I'm not exactly complaining about that, despite being a notorious continuity hound, as that movie was so contradictory to canon in so many ways, as just hand-wave gestures and not really explaining any of the shit that went down, that I'm not exactly complaining. Genesis is probably the worst movie war right now, because it conflicts with all that stuff, instead of at least, playing lip service to the parts that people expected. Of course, the reason why that was with Genesis was because it was written by a writer who had absolutely nothing to do with the show, versus the Mach Saga novel and the Drive Sagas being written by Riku Sanjo and Keiichi Hasegawa. So, writer that never had anything else to do with Drive or any other Kamen Rider project versus the head writers for the show. Who are you going to pick? You're going to side with the main writers for the show, obviously. So, but yeah, this, in a way, it both contradicts and complements a few things with the main series, with how Roidmude 005 survives, in that it uploaded its consciousness and then reconstructed the core data for it to allow itself to manifest. In essence, he's a ghost of the original program. But from that pursuit, if that's possible to reconstruct Roidmude data, that leads into this movie where Go, Q, and Rena are trying to do that for Chase, and they succeed with reconstructing Roidmude cores. from their data without the whole super evolution and core drive era stuff. And the problem is they bring back Heart. Yeah, from the way it's the opening of the movie is structured, they're actually pulling a fake out on you in that you think they're doing the Mach Saga part of it first, but no, it's actually the Heart, the Kamen Rider Heart part of the movie first when they revive him, and then the Heart part of the story leads into the Mach part, in that this isn't two separate instances of a personal story like was done with the Gaim Gaidens, where you had 4 different character stories in 2 movies, said at different times. No, this is the same root incident, and the same root incitation of that is Rina, Q, and Go trying to revive Chase, only to get Heart. And it's not just Heart alone that revives in a human Roidmude body they then use to take their previous copied forms, but they're all locked together in Shift Heartron, and that's actually how this thing works. It's downloaded onto itself the data of the 3 Roidmudes, and while the actors for Chase and Medic are... Well, Medic's actress does appear, but playing the woman she originally copied. And Brain does not appear on screen at all, but they're essentially all trapped in the same body with Heart as the dominant one, and it's kind of weird, admittedly, but since Heart maintains control most of the time, it's not like you got weird body-swapping antics where the actor has to play all 3 of the characters at the same time. We don't have that going down. We have it for about a minute for a bit of silly antics with them reveling in how they have the body again, and then they put it to the side with Heart being the dom over the other 2 who... Yeah, you can get the sexual innuendo in all you want with that. But pretty much... Heart has a second chance at life, Heart has a second chance to do Roidmude stuff, except until Genpachiro reveals that they built a safety switch in the case they screwed up. And they did. So he's like frozen in his own... His body locks up whenever Genpachiro presses a switch on a remote control. Kind of like the androids from Dragon Ball. And Genpachiro essentially cons him into assisting on a case where previous Roidmude copy victims have been assaulted, some of them killed. Which leads us to the revelation of there existing a Roidmude. I am blanking on the actual name of the thing. Excuse me for a moment as I actually pull up the page. Roidmude 5886. And they eventually discovered that in the same way that the humans were trying to reconstruct Roidmude data, Roidmude 5886 was the culmination of all the data of the Roidmudes amalgamating into a single Roidmude form and attacking all of the prior copy victims as a means of becoming a completed entity, and pretty much just attacking them wildly because all the programs from all the others are in confliction with each other. They're not amalgamating correctly into a root consciousness. Now, something that's a bit odd of this is that you have 3 Roidmudes sharing the same body, and then you have all of the Roidmudes from Chase all the way to Cyberoid ZZZ. Everything that ever had a Roidmude form is amalgamated into this thing, and evidently that makes sense considering 5886 is the number you get when you add all of the individual Roidmude numbers together, but it's like you have copies of these 3 plus Chase in another role later in the film versus a Roidmude that is the amalgamation of all the other Roidmudes and them as well. So it's like, somehow you made 2 copies of the same individuals. How does that work? But, to tie back to the thing about them probably not functioning on full core drive ears is that um, they don't exactly have the power they used to. I mean, Hart assumes his evolved Roidmute form, and he's barely a match for the Roidmute amalgamation. He never uses any of his core drive ear tech. He's pretty much just running on the internal systems of the human form Roidmute they stuffed him in. So, I don't think he had a fully realized core drive ear or wasn't in sync with it. Similarly with how he was, I don't want to say arguing, because they really weren't, but the three Roidmute, it kind of shows the chaotic consciousness problems of two or more entities amalgamating together, whereas when they try to transform into a common rider form, the interference from Brain and Medic caused them to assume type shifts speed while technique instead of the full type Hartron form, and he doesn't assume type Hartron until he's the dominant consciousness with the other two removed from the shift car, which is pretty much thematically opposed to what originally happened with Type Trideron, where it was the synergistic fusion creating a power greater than any of the shift cars, Krim or Shinosuke combined, versus Hart needing the isolation from those closest to him to actually be able to function, even though he also calls upon their powers using this device. So it's like, it's a contradiction in terms, because you would think that to use this correctly, he would need to sync with the others and not have them transfer themselves into the reproduction driver they are using to even function. It's a bit odd to me. But I think that might be key to why at the end of this, after shutting down Roidmute, I keep looking at the number because I can't call it off the top of my head, 5886, they then shut down and their cores vanish. Why? That's another question I'm not entirely certain on right now, since I didn't exactly catch the phrase they used to explain them shutting down. Is it possibly due to the body they were using not having enough power, their cores not being stable, or just not enough data to be self-sustaining? I'm not exactly certain. But, the Commodore Hart's part of the film is definitely a bit more comedic, with the double act between him, and by him I mean Hart, and Genpachiro Oda, along with the side commentary by Brain and Medic that's going on all in Hart's head. And, it's at least interesting to look at this from the perspective of this being one of the few times we see the antagonists working with one of the heroes of the series. And that wasn't exactly unknown in Drive. There were a few assorted incidents where that happened, more normally with Chase, but it doesn't involve Shinosuke at all. It's involving one of those that was pretty much considered a buffoon by the Roidmute forces, and how they, he was nothing special. He was the normal human. It's kind of like with the revival, the arc of Heart, Brain, and Medic is to see the true merits of a human who's he was pretty much a goofball. So it's like learning. I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. Learning to appreciate those for others for who they are and something. It at least contrasts well against Hart's roots issue with the other interactions with humanity, through Bano's torturing of him, and then inserting his evil influence control chip into the other 107 Roidmudes, where that he's seen the worst of humanity, so he doesn't believe in there being a better aspect to them. Whereas at the end of the series, he first made friends with Shinosuke, and now in this revived state, allows him to befriend and appreciate Genpachiro, who's just normal. It's not any extreme, it's just a normal dude that he ends up connecting with. So it's not necessary. I don't exactly feel it added anything in the grand scheme, but it was nonetheless nice to see. However, not all of the Roidmude remnants died from this incident. Roidmude 005, to tie back into the Mach Saga novel, survives the destruction of this amalgamation and plans revenge on Go again. This time as the Seeker Roidmude host, because the Seeker Roidmude was a hybrid Roidmude. Anyways, the host for that one, Reiko Nishitori. I'm looking at the page again because Reiko Nishihori. She was arrested because she originally, and she was motivated to work with the Roidmudes because she wanted to earn the respect of her father, Koya Nishihori, who at the beginning of the series was a criminal that Shinosuke and his partner caught, and she pretty much she was just trying to earn his respect and everything like that as part of her own crimes, and pretty much he was a non-violent offender, so she got out in 2 years, and over that time, as explored in the Mach Saga novel, Go kept in contact with her and helped her through her rehabilitation, so they're kind of like attracted to each other now, especially due to them both having the parental issues. Go with Bano and Reiko with Koya, and how the sins of those individuals reflected on them. Go looking to purge them from himself by working to stop his creations, and Reiko just giving up in the face of that to pretty much just follow in her father's footsteps in the worst possible ways, and how she's not going to do that anymore. But pretty much Roidmude 05 is planning this revenge in framing the now released Reiko in using how should I phrase this? He strangles to death other Roidmude host victims in copycat crimes, so that everybody is pointing fingers at Reiko, even though Go doesn't believe anything about the situation, especially since he just tried to take her on a date. So it's like how should I phrase this? They have all the clues that should make it obvious that Reiko is the culprit, but Go's faith in her from getting to know her makes him not want to believe that and try to help her. And it is eventually revealed to be Roidmude 005. And I gotta say, this is probably the best fight of the film, because 005 legitimately has the upper hand the entire time. In fact, when Go first confronts him, he creates a length of hair that he'd been using as his nooses and appears to strangle him to death. And Go was only saved by Reiko using the new Zenrin shooter to sever the line. And admittedly, with how it's shot, it seems like he should have been able to raise his hand and shoot himself free himself, instead of just dropping it so Reiko could pick it up about a minute later. But the hair thing is kind of the giveaway to that, to the whole thing of Reiko not being the actual culprit, because she just got out of prison. Where is she getting the hair to use as the nooses for all of her strangle victims? It doesn't exactly make sense, since she would also need to, purchase them with money, which would be traceable. And so her being suspected of this is really kind of obvious. Instead of, if you're immediately going back to your previous modus operandi after being released from prison, it's kind of an orgy of evidence, to use a TV tropes term, where there's so much evidence of someone's guilt, even though it doesn't make sense that you think they did it, even though it doesn't make sense from an individual standpoint, especially since, a smart criminal, which Reiko's original acts originally were, yes, it's stupid for her to immediately go back to doing that, and no one really seems to point that out, as the orgy of evidence trope is emphasized on fictitious unreality, in that the more evidence you have in a real case, the better, so no one ever really sees that in real life. It's only in fictional works with criminals and detectives that happens. So it's, in hindsight, kind of obvious, especially with 005 around to facilitate that kind of thing. But yeah, I really like the Mach versus the Revenger Roidmute fight, as it's still obviously done on the cheap, but it's not just high action, it's a differing set of blows. It's like being back to basics, and really? And, now I lost my train of thought again. And he doesn't just use one tactic. There's no, going to dead heat or going to chaser Mach. It's at first fully just 005 versus the base Mach suit with the reproduction signal Mach, and assumedly reproduction signal bikes, since they're all suddenly back. He uses signal Cockacern in the battle, and it's like kids think he's kicking ass and taking names, and then 005 evolves into his Revenger state, and it's a complete reversal until Chase's remnant data, using the right crosser, it'd been alluded to a few times in both parts of the film, takes pseudo-possession of, I'm forgetting, Koichi Kano, the copy model for Jace's human form, to deliver the ride crosser to Go so he can use it and assume his silver and blue-purple Mach Chaser form, which completely reverses things. And Mach Chaser does not seem as strong as Chaser Mach, even though it's a more contiguously complete costume. It may be due to the power limitations in his new Mach driver, which can only function for about 5 minutes, but it doesn't seem as swift, strong, or as powerful as the form Go used to counter Gold Drive. And again, that's probably a scene limitation thing where they couldn't do anything that extreme, but it's still capping things with things then turning the tables, the escalation of the conflict back due to 005's advanced Roidmute form. But overall, I think Mach's section of this is better, mainly by being buoyed up by the ongoing romance and Go trying to connect more deeply with Reiko through their constant connection, their parallels of character with the whole sins of their parents thing, go exploring Go's character a bit with how he's a bit devastated with Reiko's seeming rejection, and then this whole what's the phrase, crisis that he gets involved in. And it's definitely the better one of the two, but again, it feels like an unnecessary addition, more tying into things from Mach Saga versus any loose ends from Drive itself, as due to all the web spin-off things and the films and the whole Roid Mute countdown, it pretty much wrapped its story organically by its final episode. So, while you had something with Drive Saga Chaser to a mid-series thing exploring his character, to go to something past the point of the end of the series is... you don't have much to work with, unfortunately. You made something that I feel is ultimately a decent story edition, but it still feels like he could skip it and lose nothing. And admittedly, I'm one of those people that really likes what did they do after the series events. I like the idea of the versus movies and the winter Kamen Rider movie war films, as you have that one final story with this prior cast that just ended to give them a what have they done since the series send-off that gives a bit more closure. I like the idea of that, as then you know the direction they're headed in the rest of their lives if they didn't exactly give that at the end of the series. And let's face it, with Japanese series, usually the worst parts of their things are the rushed wrap-ups. We saw this with Naruto, we saw this with Bleach. That was both the biggest sin of their endings, is the epilogues were vastly unsatisfying. And Toei has been a bit better with that. No matter if you consider the versus movies canon or not, they're supposed to be. A lot of them don't work that way. But I'm in the camp that should really like this, because it gives that continuing story, and I don't hate it. I just don't think it's particularly... I don't think it's that good. Like, it's good, it's well-constructed, the jokes are a bit funny, there's a good bit of funny moments. I like the idea of the romance of Reiko and Go, which is... I don't think it's fulfilling my expectations, and I'd probably be more emotionally invested if I was able to read the novel. Unfortunately, my fluency in Japanese is not good enough to go out and buy the light novel and be able to read it yet. I'm working on it amongst everything else. So, yeah, ultimately this was kind of disappointing, in the grand scheme of things. But, hey, when TV Nihon, or when Overtime, or when whoever subs this movie, check it out. Not exactly disappointed. I am a bit disappointed with this, but it's not a waste of your time.